Yo, when I walked into the bathroom, I noticed a little glimmer on the carpet from the sunlight peeking through the blinds. It didn't blind me or anything, just caught my eye. I looked down, being barefoot and all, didn't want to step on any glass or stuff. Caroline didn't say she dropped anything in there, so who knows. I didn't see it at first 'cause it blended in with the carpet, but eventually found it, a tiny circle of something. As I walked into the bathroom, a piece of foil fell to the floor and caught the light in my eyes. I picked it up and realized it was the backing from a pill strip. You know, the little circle of foil that pops out when you push the pill through the strip. Usually it stays attached, but sometimes, like in this case, it comes loose and falls. I checked it out, one side was blank, but the other side had markings. Since it was Wednesday, I figured that meant it was Tuesday's pill. This meant I had to take these pills every day. I was on top of it. I wasn't on any meds, I was 35 and feeling great, just like my wife Caroline. We both had our checkups recently and were told we were healthy. So why the heck was there a pill packet in my bathroom? I knew there were a few pills to take every day, but the only one I could think of was the birth control pill. Caroline hadn't been on the pill, or at least I didn't think she had been since I got snipped 2 years ago after our last kid. She never complained about cramps or period pain, so what gives? I was one of the fortunate ones who never had any issues with my periods, so why take pills? I have to admit, my initial reaction was that she might be hiding some kind of illness from me. For a moment, my mind went to some dark places, but then I remembered our recent physical exams where we both came out clean. If the little foil circle was here, then the pills were probably here too. I closed and locked the door. Caroline was still in bed, so I started searching. It took me a while, but I eventually found them. Yo, so I finally found them, right? They were buried at the bottom of a box of tampons, next to a box of aspirin. When I pulled out the strip of pills, I immediately knew they were the ones she used to take before my surgery, and even back when we weren't trying for kids. Why the hell did she start taking them again? There was only one explanation: she must have been sleeping with someone who could knock her up. She cheated on me, man. Caroline and I were together for 9 years. I had just finished college and was working towards becoming. So there was this engineer chick who was working as an assistant, right? We met at a bar and didn't exactly click right away, but there was enough interest for her to say yes to going out to dinner with me. Caroline was tall, only a couple inches shorter than my 5 feet 10 inches self. She used to be an athlete, so she had a toned body, slim figure, and small boobs. But let me tell you, her booty was absolutely incredible, my favorite part of her body. We dated for about a year before tying the knot when I was 26. By then, we already had 2 kids, aged 5 and 2. Oh, and I got surgery to make sure we didn't have any more kids after that. 2 accidents were our limit. We had the perfect set. James was born first, then Sonia. I thought I had an impeccable family. Caroline went back to work after each of her kids, never wanting to give up her job. We had a nanny who took care of the kids during the day and went home in the evening, almost costing as much as Caroline made. But Caroline didn't mind, she just wanted to get out of the house and work at a job she loved. I worked with a couple of friends to start an engineering firm, and together we were unstoppable. We were never wealthy, but we always had a blast. After tidying up the bathroom and putting back her pills, I realized I needed to mull things over. It wouldn't make sense to confront her at that moment. I needed to come up with a plan and gather evidence. I had no clue what would happen next. The first step was to gather all the facts and then figure out where to go from there. I went to work like normal and weighed my options. I wanted to know who, when, and for how long this had been going on. Could it be someone from work? Heaven forbid, her boss. Is it the same person she was in contact with before we met? Alright, so here's the deal. I gotta ask myself, were these kids even mine to begin with? I mean, I never let my feelings cloud my judgment. I knew this day would come where I'd feel hurt, betrayed, and pissed off. But before I jump to any conclusions, I gotta figure out if it's actually true. I started doing some research, and the first thing I did was look up DNA test kits. Testing the kids would be easy peasy. I used to tuck them in before Caroline got home, so it's doable. I easily ordered some spy gear, a couple of small voice recorders to hide in her car and bag, and a few tiny cameras to hide around the house. I didn't think she was up to anything at home since she was hardly ever there when I wasn't around, or at least I didn't think so. I needed to get into her phone, so I found out about a cloning tool that could copy her phone, get all her messages and emails, and even listen in on her calls. To do this, I had to buy another phone. It took a few days for all the stuff to be delivered. During that time, I kept a close eye on her. Caroline didn't do anything out of the ordinary. Our sex life was pretty average, happening once or twice a week, usually on the weekends when we'd stay up late in bed. I never caught a whiff of anything fishy on her, and she never rushed to shower as soon as she got home. Nothing seemed to change, so either she wasn't cheating or she was being super sneaky about it. Maybe she'd been having an affair for so long that it just became second nature. The packages finally arrived on Friday morning. I told them to send all that stuff to my office so no one would ask questions. I had DNA test kits, voice recorders, a bunch of cameras, a cell phone, and a cloning kit. I was all set to go that day. I left work early, and when I got home, the wife was just feeding the kids dinner before putting them to bed. I left her to handle that and went to hide the cameras, one in the bathroom, one in the living room, and one in the bedroom with a good view of the bed. I heard the kids playing in the bathroom, so I went to help them get ready. So, I put Sonia to bed and left the babysitter with James. I managed to get a swab from Sonia's cheek, stuck it in my pocket, then tucked her in and read to her until she fell asleep. When I checked on James, he was still wide awake and the babysitter was still reading to him. I offered to take over so she could go home, and she happily agreed. It didn't take long for James to fall asleep too, less than 20 minutes actually. I packaged up the swab from Sonia, along with the one I got from my cheek, and dropped them in the mailbox for the postman to pick up. Hey, pick 'em up in the morning. The service said we'd get the results online within 48 business hours, so that's Wednesday. Caroline came home right on schedule and we just went about our usual stuff. She talked about her day, I talked about mine, and neither of us really listened to the other. We had dinner and then she went to shower. While she was busy, I snuck in and planted voice recorders in her car and bag, and cloned her phone. I checked the clone for any shady messages or emails, but I couldn't tell if she was just being extra cautious or if she wasn't cheating. The weekend passed by like any other, and we had sex both mornings before the kids woke up. It was almost like a ritual, almost routine. She didn't receive any calls or messages, and since we were together all the time, I couldn't check if she was taking her pills. I did look at the pill strip and noticed that the corresponding days were missing. Since it was just us in the house over the weekend and I didn't take the pills, I guess it was fair game. So, I figured out that she lied to me on Monday. I had told her I'd be working from home, but she still went to the office. I seized the chance to grab the flash drives from all the cameras and have a look. The camera in the bathroom showed she did take the pills, but the real shocker was on the bedroom camera. On Saturday night, while I was cooking dinner, she hopped into the shower in the bedroom. I noticed her texting someone on her phone, but there was nothing on the phone I checked. She must have a second phone that I didn't clone. It wasn't in her bag, so where could it be? Yo, I saw her messing around with him. After she finished writing a message, she walked over to the vent, ducked down, and opened it to hide her phone inside. I quickly checked the vent and realized the phone wasn't there. She must hide it there when she's at home, but takes it with her when she leaves. I needed to get my hands on that phone. It was the first solid proof that she was up to something shady. I had a feeling she was cheating, but I still didn't know for sure what was going on. I wasn't sure, but I saw her grab the phone from the vent and put it in her bag before she left for the day. I needed that phone later when she got back home. I kept an eye on her as she nonchalantly dropped her bag in the hallway and went about her usual evening routine. After dinner, she took a shower and that's when I checked her bag. The phone wasn't there, she must have taken it with her and hid it in the vent. When she went upstairs, she either didn't know or didn't care. So, I was sneaking into Sonia's room through the vent, right? And I found her phone, grabbed it, cloned it onto my own phone in my office real quick, then put it back before almost getting caught by my wife as she got out of the shower. I sat by Sonia's bed, started stroking her hair, and when my wife came in, she asked me what I was doing. I just shook my head and said I like to come in here. I sometimes chill with one of them to remind myself how blessed I am to have two awesome kids. She grinned and called me a mushy old man. Come on, let's bounce before you wake her up, she said. It wasn't until the next day that I saw the clone of the phone, and that's when everything fell apart. I couldn't even hear my secretary's intercom as I sat at my desk, tears rolling down my cheeks. Eventually, she must have gotten fed up. Yo, so I was just chillin' in my office when Michelle, my secretary, came knockin' on the door. She's always rockin' this serious vibe, lookin' way older than she actually is. I'd say she's somewhere between 30 and 40, with that red hair and green eyes. She's always wearin' these conservative outfits that make her look like she's ready for bingo night. Our relationship has always been strictly business, never even thought about making a move on her. So what happened to the last guy who tried, and let's just say it wasn't pretty? I learned my lesson real quick. You gotta talk to this dude I work with, he's like the ladies' man in the office. He was hitting on this chick, couldn't handle the fact that she wasn't into him. She straight up told me, if he doesn't stop, she's out and suing for harassment and getting pushed out. She said the only reason she hasn't already is because I always treated her right and never crossed any lines. My partner was a real piece of work. Angry as hell and ready to kick her to the curb, he gave us an ultimatum, either she goes or he goes. So, I ended up owning 60% of the company instead of the 40% I started with. I had one less partner now that Michelle had stormed out when she saw me. I could hear voices outside my office, then everything went quiet. Michelle came back, shut and locked the door behind her, then dragged a chair over to sit down at my table. She was like a meter away from me, looking at me, and then she just pulled out some napkins from her purse, because women always have them handy, and gave them to me. I took them without really thinking and started wiping my eyes. "Tell me," was all she said. I showed her the phone. There were text messages from someone named Caroline, but the other person wasn't named. They didn't use any names, but they were talking about secret meetings and sex that seemed to never end. Whoever it was, they knew her well. They were talking about things that only I should know about, like the small mole on the inside of her thigh. Man, she was making some cute noises during sex. But besides that, there were other things only a real lover would know, not just some fling. I wasn't mentioned in any of her texts at all, like I didn't even exist. It's like I wasn't even a passing thought. She asked me if I knew who she was talking about, still keeping it professional. I just shook my head. Then she asked me how I knew, so I told her about finding a little silver bookmark on the bathroom floor and about the pills. That's the story. It was crazy, bro. I was talking and she was just staring at me the whole time. Then I noticed she was holding my hand. It was the first time we actually touched. She said we need more info and that the kid's DNA will be collected on Wednesday. I asked if I could wait until then, but I wasn't sure. She said our producers in Portland need to see me ASAP and she already booked me a flight for the next day. I can't even process all of this right now. Tell Caroline I said she took my phone, typed a text, and sent it to herself. Something went down in Portland and we gotta go check it out. I'll be back on Thursday, love you. She replied right away, saying, okay, let me know when you get there. I'll see you when you get back. She glanced at the phone for a sec, smirked, then handed it back to me and grabbed her own. Lorraine, she said. Michelle, yes, thank you. When are you free this Arvo? Great, see you then. Grab yourself a snack, she told me in a friendly tone. Her bossy tone and the way she had me trained to follow her orders at work made me just go along with whatever she said. It was kind of a relief not having to make decisions or plans myself. When I came out of the bathroom, she was holding my jacket. Where are we going? I asked. You have an appointment with an old friend of mine, she said. Turns out, Lorraine was Michelle's bestie and also a divorce lawyer. She was working on Michelle's divorce when. So, Michelle found out Herman was messing around with one of his co-workers. She told Lorraine all about it, and I was just standing there in shock. I mean, that kind of drama never happens to me. Lorraine seemed like she's dealt with this kind of thing before, 'cause once she knew all the details, she turned to me and said, Gary, this ain't about you. Then out of nowhere, Michelle straight up slapped me across the face. I was so stunned, but Lorraine looked kinda amused at first, until she saw the hurt in my eyes. She asked me, I nodded. Do you have any ideas of what you want to do with this? At those words, my engineer brain kicked in. Plans started forming in my head. Kill them both, I said. I expected Michelle to be shocked, but surprisingly she just grinned. Okay, said Lorraine. I understand, but unfortunately, that's not an option. It's against the law. However, we do have several legal options. Let's look at them before I begin, she said. I'm just laying out your options, I'm not advocating for any of them. But this may happen. Alright, so here's the deal. Option 1, just chill and act like you don't know she's up to no good. In my opinion, you've been living a pretty good life so far, no need to mess that up. Keep up the act of being clueless. Option 2, go for a friendly divorce. Cite irreconcilable differences, split your assets and finances, you might have to pay some child support since she makes less than you. Option 3, go all out and sue for adultery if you want to go nuclear. Those kids ain't yours, sue for a phony birth certificate. Sue whoever that other person is for messing with your relationship. If he's the dad, sue him to get back all the cash you dropped on those kids. If he's a coworker, sue him for breaking the company's no fraternizing rule. Nowadays, almost every workplace has one. If the other person is hitched, spill the beans to their partner about the affair. If she's in the loop, we can go after her too. If not, maybe I can be her lawyer in the divorce. Let's do this. Spread the word to everyone, friends, family, co-workers. If she's part of any clubs or church groups, make sure they shame her as much as possible. We have to protect our assets. Sell your portion of the business and put it in an offshore trust, mortgage the house, take whatever you can. Cash out your 401k and let's throw a party in Vegas. My mind was racing with thoughts, I quickly realized what she meant. Option 1 was not on the table, I wasn't going to be anyone's willing fool. I've been a pushover, clueless cuckold for way too long. Option 2. No way. I worked too damn hard building our business and providing us with the lifestyle we had. She can't expect to take half of everything I have and then expect me to keep supporting her while she's out having fun with someone else. Option 3. I told her it's nuclear. Lorraine just smiled. Fine, then I'll start filling out the divorce papers. I recommend starting some undercover surveillance on your wife to find out who she's seeing, when, and where. We really need more evidence. Can I keep this phone, by the way? It ain't helping you at all. I nodded and gave her the phone. Michelle and I bounced from Lorraine's office and she brought me to a little family-run hotel. She got me a room, told me to shower and get some grub for the room. She said she had it covered and would be back later with some stuff for me. I was just going through the motions, my whole world was crashing down and there I was, in a hotel room ordering room service like it was no big deal. It was the only way I could deal with the stress of everything that was going on. 9 years on the toilet, what a mess. Man, what really got to me was that I had no clue about any of this. How did I not see what she was up to? Was it the same boss she kept going back to after each kid? She told me she enjoyed her job and her freedom, but was that the truth or was she just missing her lover too much to be apart for so long? I was eyeing up the mini bar, thinking about giving in, when Michelle walked in. Don't even think about it, she said. You need to focus and not drown your sorrows. You gotta make a plan and stick to it. So, picture this, I'm sitting there, feeling all depressed and shit, trying to come up with a plan. I mean, I had it all figured out, you know. I had a great wife, 2 awesome kids, and now look at me. My wife's a cheater, and I'm not even sure if those brats are mine. I'm basically the biggest loser in the world, my whole life is going down the drain, and you want me to come up with a plan. I looked at her, hoping she'd say something, maybe show some sympathy or give me a hug. But no, she just looked away. Listen up, she said all serious like, the pity party is done. How many times did we hit roadblocks when we were trying to start our company and things didn't go as planned? What does that have to do with anything? She kept asking. I don't know, I said, a bunch of times. Like when the patent office lost our application for an innovative filament and we still came out on top against the competition. Or when the bank tried to foreclose on us early because of pressure. Yeah, there were tough times, okay, she said. But at what point did we let that stop us? How many times have you just sat down, put your head in your hands, and felt like giving up? What was different back then? She asked. Back then, I had something to fight for, I replied. I had a family depending on me. But now you have a family too, she pointed out. And it's much bigger than just your immediate family at home. 141 people and their families are counting on you to sort this out. None of your partners are capable of keeping the company going. You're all engineers, but out of the three of you, you're the only one who can handle it. Hey man, if you screw up, the whole company goes down. Do you really think this lady gives a damn about the families who rely on our company? If she gets half, she'll just sell it off to the highest bidder and you'll lose control. You know some big shot is gonna swoop in and take over everything you've built. Is that what you want? I looked at her and realized she was right. I've put in too much time and effort to just let it all slip away to whoever offers this lady more cash. I need to get my act together and make sure my future, and the company's future, are secure. Man, if those kids were mine, I'd make sure they were looked after. But as for Caroline, well, she dug her own grave. I can mourn the loss of this relationship later, once everything else is sorted. When my confusion cleared and I was fueled by anger and determination, I sat down with Michelle and started making plans. I was gonna make sure the company's future was secure and take care of the only family I had left. It was at that moment when I made this decision that everything fell into place. The pain vanished, the uncertainty disappeared, and I had no doubts. Michelle saw it all. I saw the look on my face change and nodded in approval. That's the kind of Gary I need right now, she said. Someone who knows how to plan ahead. We spent the rest of the evening brainstorming on how to make sure the company's future is secure. At first, I was thinking about selling my shares to the partners, but Michelle shot that idea down. She didn't believe they could be trusted to run the company or leave it in my hands once they took over as majority shareholders. She thought they would just ruin everything. I need to keep control in my hands. So, we basically figured we could set up an offshore trust, and I would sell the company to it for a fair price. I would still be the CEO but on a low salary, basically earning next to nothing because the trust was offshore and couldn't be touched by the courts. The owners of the trust would be anonymous, making me a millionaire on paper. I needed to get rid of all this money, cash out my 401k, and free up the equity in my house. We were together when we bought the house. It was only in my name because Caroline wasn't working at the time. She was pregnant with James, and the mortgage advisor suggested it would be easier to put the loan in my name since she wasn't earning. I made a list of things to do and contacted my lawyer, who was dealing with the legal stuff for the company, to set up a meeting for the next day. After Michelle left, I took a shower and went to bed. I didn't expect to sleep for long, but I passed out as soon as my head hit the pillow and slept. When my phone alarm went off the next day, I saw a message from Caroline. She was asking why I didn't tell her I arrived and if everything was okay. I apologized and explained that I had planned to, but ended up falling asleep. Things are starting to come together now and I should be back on Thursday. Okay, I'll see you then. Love you XX. I couldn't bring myself to reply to her message. Michelle knocked on my door around 8 and I decided to take another shower before heading to breakfast. She mentioned breakfast as I was getting ready. So, she was like, come on, follow me, and we ended up at a diner nearby. We sat in a booth and chowed down on some bacon and pancakes with maple syrup. Part of me couldn't figure out why I was going along with it, like my whole world wasn't falling apart and my heart wasn't breaking. I guess I was just thinking that eventually it would all hit me, but I wasn't ready for that yet. Michelle told me to call my lawyer, Brian Spencer, and he said he could meet us at 10. We can hit up your bank first and cash out your 401k, and also take out some equity from your house before we go there. I get that combining my money is smart, I said, but there's still a paper trail showing I had it all. Can't the court just make me pay her half if it comes down to it? Michelle smirked, that's where Vegas comes into play. Once you have all that cash, you head to Vegas for a week and blow a ton of money. Do all this before you even file for divorce. That way, when it comes time for the court to decide, you'll look broke and in debt, actually. The bank's gonna take your house and your paycheck won't even cover your living expenses, especially if those kids aren't yours. If they are, you might as well put your whole 401k in a trust for their college. Caroline won't be able to touch it, technically, she'll make more money than you and can easily afford the house on her own. She might even end up paying you alimony. When are you gonna get the DNA results? The company said they should be online sometime today, I said, picking up the phone. I checked the email the company sent me and there was a link that I clicked on. It started to load, but then I put the phone down. I wasn't sure I was ready to see the results yet. Michelle asked and I pushed the phone towards her. She took it and looked at the screen, scrolling up a few times. I watched her face, looking for clues, trying to guess from her expression what she might say. She looked up from the phone. "The results are not ready yet," she said. "According to the tracking data, they should be received within the next 12 hours. I let out a sigh I didn't even realize I was holding, she said as she got up. "The bank should be open by now." It was surprisingly quick to free up equity in the house and cash out my 401k. I closed all of our savings accounts, even the ones for our kids' college funds, and moved the money to an account in my name. The only account I didn't touch was our joint account that we use every day. There was hardly any money left in there anyways, less than $10,000. My lawyer threw a wrench in our plans, but hopefully we can still make it work. "Listen, the way he did it, you're forgetting one thing. He mentioned during our planning meeting that you have a marriage contract." I was shocked. I had no clue that was a requirement for the partnership agreement. "When you first started, he reminded me that all partners had to sign a prenup to protect the company in case things went south. It only applies to the company, so your personal assets are safe in case of a divorce. Just remember, you're an employee here, so at the end of the day, you're at the company's mercy. You should just get your paycheck and 401k, that's my advice. I'm not trying to diss your divorce lawyer, but maybe you should use the money you've got from selling the house and your 401k to buy out one of your business partners. I know Robert wants to make some cash, and even though you don't have enough money for this, you could borrow some from the company's pension fund. You'd pay it back from your salary, so you'll end up with less money coming in. Your credit score is going to tank when the bank takes your house and you lose half of your savings, since everything else is tied up with the company. But other than that, she won't get anything. We can lower your salary so she might even end up paying you child support. But what about me? If my whole paycheck goes to loan payments, I still need a place to live and food to eat, not to mention I have 2 more kids." "Wait a sec, I think Leighton wants to hang out with the kids," he said. "Have you figured out what you'll do if they're not yours? Will you still be in their lives?" "I have no idea," I replied. "It's just too awful to even think about. I'll have to wait until I know for sure before deciding anything." "Oh, and don't forget about the other stuff in your plan with the other lawyers," he reminded me. "I'm willing to bet you'll get enough money from the lawsuit against her company to pay off the loan and all. Once this mess is over, I better start getting my full paycheck again. And I'm definitely gonna ask the kids' dad to cough up for all their expenses if it turns out they're not even his. But that's a problem for after the divorce, not part of the settlement agreement. Can you reach out to Robert for me and see if he's down to sell? I'm not sure I can handle that right now." He agreed with a nod. "I'll give him a call and update you later." We shook hands and left his office. I felt a weight off my shoulders as we walked out of the building, and things started falling into place. I always felt so good whenever we made those plans, you know. But then it hit me why we even made them in the first place. I suddenly felt this emptiness in my chest. We were just chillin' at a diner eating lunch when I finally got the guts to check my phone again. I could only manage to click on the link in the email before passing the phone to Michelle. I was low-key anxious, waiting for her reaction to see if I was gonna be a dad or not. And then she softly said, "I'm sorry, Gary." Man, that was like the last thing I expected her to say. "Man, you won't believe this shit." She gave me the phone and I saw for myself that neither of those kids were actually mine, even though they had the same dad. It wasn't me, man. Finding out I wasn't their dad hit me hard, but then I got even more pissed off when I realized she had lied to me and convinced me to get a vasectomy so I couldn't have kids of my own. Gary snapped me out of it, telling me to stay calm and promising we'll get through this. Now's not the time to lose it. Just take a few deep breaths and we'll figure this out. Taking a deep breath to calm my anger, I was seriously considering beating the crap out of someone. I even thought about hiring a hitman to take out the jerk who fathered the kids that were supposed to be mine. Michelle got me back on track and we left the diner. Lorraine called and said she wants to meet up, so we headed to her office. When we got there, Lorraine looked pretty down. She mentioned she had a preliminary report from a private investigator and said Caroline wasted no time last night. "A guy showed up at your place and..." Last night we stayed over and couldn't check inside. I have cameras set up in the house. I suggested swapping out the flash drive so we can see what happened. She agreed and told me to go ahead and do it now so we can make a plan. I'm thinking the info on those flash drives will be crucial. There might be evidence on there. I told her I can't go back, as I'm supposed to be out of town for work. Lorraine checked her phone and said the kids are at the play center with Sophie and James. She promised to keep an eye on them and update me if anything happens. So, we left my place, which was like 30 minutes away from Line's office. Michelle was driving like a maniac, but we made it there in one piece. I swapped out the flash drives and he checked out the house real quick, didn't find anything sketchy. Then we headed back to Lorraine's office to check the drives. I decided to skip the one from the bedroom, didn't want to know what was going on in there. It was obvious we were dealing with a dude the moment he walked in, and yep, it was her boss, just like I thought. When I was with Bill Wright, the thing that really got to me was when he came to the house. He had his own key, so he just walked right in. James saw him and ran to hug him, calling him Papa Bill. This made me lose it. I started crying and couldn't bear to watch. Lorraine saw me break down, and for the first time ever, Michelle hugged me and comforted me as I cried. It took some time, but eventually I composed myself. Lorraine then asked if I wanted to take a break and rest for a bit. Man, I was shaking my head as the pain started to ease up a bit, but then the anger started creeping back in. I was like, what's next? I already got a hold of the terms of employment at your wife's job, and there's a rule against fraternizing. So, you could totally sue the company for breaking that rule, especially since your wife is getting cozy with one of the big shots there. They can't even try to play dumb about it. We made sure Lorraine knew what my company's lawyer had told me. When she got the advice, she couldn't help but smile big. She grabbed her phone and called him, requesting copies of the prenup, and he sent them over via email. This is exactly what I needed, she exclaimed as she read through the marriage contract. Forget everything I said earlier, your man's strategy is spot on. If your significant other wants to ditch the business, just buy them out. Invest all your assets into the company, and it will be untouchable. We can take legal action against her company for not following court orders and him for causing a rift. Man, she really messed up by lying on her birth certificate, and both of them are getting called out for spending all that money on the kids. The medical bills for the childbirth alone are no joke. It's all up to Robert if he wants to sell. I told them we'll just have to wait and see what he decides. Michelle gave me a ride back to the hotel, and as soon as I got to my room and was about to sit down, someone knocked on the door. I opened it and saw her standing there in the hallway. Let's go, she said. You can't stay here. Stay here, I asked. Why? Because you can't be alone, she said. You'll just sulk or raid the mini bar. I want you where I can keep an eye on you. As she spoke, she gathered my things, took me by the hand, and led me out of the room. She then checked me over and guided me to her car. Where are we going? I asked, realizing I didn't really care. To my house, she said. I have a spare room you can crash in. But I started to protest, but she cut me off with a look. I fell silent. I had never been to Michelle's place before, and I was intrigued. I was totally shocked when I saw that her house was almost the same size as mine. Our house has 2 floors, while hers only has 1. She took me into a room with a bathroom to shower and change. Then she ordered dinner, saying it would be ready in 30 minutes. We ate dinner in complete silence. I guess the food was good, but I couldn't even taste it because my mind was racing with all sorts of thoughts that wouldn't calm down. I was so mad, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I was heartbroken, but I couldn't find the strength to worry about it. All I had the energy for at that moment was to focus on carrying out my plans. I was on autopilot, heading to my destination without really thinking about it. I was just figuring out what to do after eating when the phone suddenly rang. I cringed, hoping it wasn't Caroline. Luckily, it wasn't her. Hello, Robert, I said lazily. Why, what's up? That's all he asked. Robert and I have been buddies since our university days. We studied together and even worked on a project that laid the foundation for our business. I initially invested more capital, so I ended up with a bigger share of the company. I think Caroline's cheating on me, I said, my voice sounding emotionless. Wait, hold up. Are you telling me none of the kids are mine? He couldn't believe it. I could hear the silence on the other end of the phone. So, you want to put all your stuff into the company and use a prenup as a shield? He asked. Either Brian Spencer, our lawyer, broke it down for him, or he just understood the partnership agreement better than I did. I want to keep 5% and stick around as a consulting engineer, he said. I'll chat with HR about the specifics. The rest is all yours, cool. I replied. I'll get Brian to sort out the paperwork. Gary. He was like, hey, I know things are tough for you right now, but trust me, it'll get better. I've been in a similar place before and it does get easier. Then it clicked that he went through a divorce like 4 years ago. I didn't know all the details because he was pretty secretive about it, but I knew it wasn't a good time for him. He must have remembered how he got through it and used that wisdom the next day. The next morning, Michelle woke me up with some coffee and was like, let's go. She was like, we've got a ton of stuff to get done. First thing we did was head over to Brian Spencer, the company's lawyer. He had all the paperwork ready for me to buy out Robert, and we finished the whole deal in under 30 minutes. I handed over everything I had, stuff from my house, my savings, my 401k. I even had to take out a loan against the company pension plan to cover the rest. So now, at least on paper, I was in debt up to $1 million. And to make matters worse, my salary got slashed in half because of the benefits being taken out before taxes. And then we just kept moving forward. So I went to Lorraine's and showed her all the paperwork for the deal. She was thrilled, saying, this is perfect. She promised to draft the documents that day and submit them on Monday. I suggested we serve them to him, her, and the company all at once. I asked, where should we serve her to really embarrass her? I joked about putting it on a Super Bowl billboard and offered to pay for it. Lorraine chuckled and suggested we serve her in the office on Monday at 10 a.m., as long as the papers are ready. Let's swing by the court before then. If I send them today, we should have them by tomorrow afternoon. I nodded and asked, so what's next? I glanced at Michelle, who was in charge now. She said we have 2 more stops before heading back to the office. She suggested I pretend I just got back from putting out a fire in Portland. Can you make it until Monday without coming in? I think I'll have to, I replied. No need to guess, she said. Just tell me what you need to make it until then. I don't know, I admitted. Any good news? She smiled at me. Come on, let's go, she said, catching me off guard. We ended up at the doctor's office, where I had all my appointments and where I had the procedure that would make me unable to have kids. Why are we here? I asked. Do you want some good news? She replied. Let's just go. I followed her into the clinic and waited while she went to the front desk. The receptionist signaled for us to sit down, so we did. Less than 2 minutes later, my doctor came out and called me into the consultation room. I glanced at Michelle. Hey, why didn't you follow me? I asked, and she just nodded and followed me. Dr. Harrington didn't say anything about my secretary being there during my appointment. He knew she wasn't my wife, since he was both my doctor and Caroline's doctor. Why I brought my secretary with me is my own business, not his, I thought. Gary, he said, I understand you wanted to ask about vasectomy reversal. My eyes widened. Is that even possible? I looked at Michelle, and she had a little smile on her face. Yes, it is possible, Dr. Harrington said. Of course, of course. Hey Harrington, it's been 3 years since you got snipped, but the success rate for reversing it is about 95%. The surgery will be a bit longer this time and you'll need anesthesia, but I'm sure you'll be able to have kids again once it's done. My eyes welled up with tears knowing I still had a shot at being a dad. Even if it meant going under the knife, it was worth it to have my own kids. I didn't know who I'd have them with, but at least it was a possibility. I'm hopeful. It's tough to hear, but the doctor said there's info about the surgery and how much it'll cost. Unfortunately, your insurance won't cover it. If you're still interested, just give me the green light and we can set you up for some tests. Thanks, Dr. Michelle said as she got up and took the paperwork from me. We'll keep in touch, she added, leading me out of the clinic towards her car. Is this good news for you? She asked with a soft smile. In a sudden impulse, I hugged her and whispered, thank you. Thanks, I said, burying my face in her hair. Then I realized what I did and quickly let go of her, stepping back. I'm so sorry, I said. It's okay, Gary said softly. We just have one more stop before heading back to the office, she said. I used to visit Bill Wary's house often when Caroline worked for him. He and his wife Stephanie lived in a fancy neighborhood just outside the city. It was a gated community where they hosted some corporate events. Why did you go there? I asked Michelle as we got out of the car. We parked the car and walked up to the house. I followed her as she didn't even bother knocking. Stephanie was told by the security guard, who showed us the way, that we were expected and she was waiting for us at the door. Hey, Gary, she greeted. You must be Michelle, his secretary. Was it you who called? Yes, that's me, Michelle answered. Come on in, Stephanie said as she led us into a room that looked like an office. I had never been in this room before, but judging by the photographs on the table and the wall, it was Bill's. I was in her office, but she just sat down at the table and motioned to the chairs across from her. It was clear she had already made up her mind that I wasn't just some random visitor. What can I do for you? Stephanie asked, giving me a quizzical look. I just sat there, speechless. Did you know? I finally managed to ask. Stephanie let out a sad sigh. No, she said. I had my suspicions, but no concrete evidence. I couldn't find anything solid to bring to a lawyer, or else I would have taken that jerk for all he's worth, she added bitterly. Do you have any proof? Michelle grumbled from the sidelines. Do you have any evidence? Stephanie inquired, looking at me. Ed nodded, proving that none of my kids are actually mine. They all have the same dad, and there's a video of him and Caroline at my place where my son calls him dad. I couldn't even finish my sentence, the lump in my throat was making it hard to speak and I felt lost once again. Oh Gary, I'm so sorry, she said. I suspected for years that he and Caroline were up to something, but he was always so cautious. I followed him, checked his phone and email, even confronted him about it, but he always managed to convince me that I was just being paranoid. The cops I hired didn't find anything. Honestly, I'm not even sure if I would believe it if I had solid proof. If I had solid proof, I would have come to you right away. But I couldn't mess up what seemed like a happy marriage just on suspicion. I needed to be sure, and I couldn't find any evidence. What are you gonna do? She asked. I debated whether I should spill the beans to my enemy's wife about my plans. Who knows if she'll spill the beans to him as soon as he gets home. It might be too late for him to do anything meaningful, but I wanted it to hit him as hard as it hit me. The real question is, what are you gonna do? I just asked if you have any proof, she said with a slight smile. I get it, she replied, I don't blame you. If you know a good divorce lawyer, let me know. I would really appreciate it. Michelle grabbed a business card from her purse and handed it to her. Thanks, she said. Will a week be enough time? I nodded. Great, she said, I'll reach out. She showed me the card and I agreed. She stood up, clearly ending our meeting. Michelle and I stood up as well. Stephanie came over, gave me a quick hug, and a peck on the cheek. Man, I'm really sorry, she said. Take care of him, she said to Michelle, who flinched when she hugged me. He deserves better than what that jerk did to him. We went back to the office and I spent the rest of the day finishing up the things I had to do while I was in Portland. At the end of the day, I went home. Mitchell knocked on my door at her usual time, peeked in and said she was heading home. She was back to being the professional she always was. This made me feel lost. I felt like I was starting to get a little closer to her. But that must have been just my imagination. I wished her good night, thanking her for her help. I worked late at the office and had a lot to catch up on. Got a message from Caroline around 8, asking what time I'll be home. Probably another hour or two, I replied. I need to finish up some things after the trip. I'll probably be asleep already, as I have to get up early in the morning. I love you XX. And again, I couldn't bring myself to respond to this message. I continued working until almost 11. I really wanted her to be asleep when I got home. The less I have to talk to her, the better I'll feel. When I got back home, the house was dark and everything seemed normal. I went to see Sonia and James, and they were both fast asleep, looking cute as ever. I felt a lump in my throat and had to sneak off to the bathroom to hide my tears. I couldn't let Caroline see me crying over kids who aren't even mine. I still don't know what to do with the kids. They probably won't even remember me if I just leave them. I didn't owe them anything, but I still cared for them both. How could I just walk away from them when just 48 hours ago they were my kids, my own flesh and blood, my pride and joy? And now they were just reminders of my wife cheating on me. I decided to wait and see what happens next, but either way, the outcome might not be in my favor. I went to bed trying not to disturb Caroline. I couldn't fall asleep right away, and when the alarm clock went off in the morning, Caroline was already gone. When I went inside, the housekeeper was there. I was in the kitchen feeding the kids when I glanced at her. She should have realized it's not possible that she doesn't know. Was she really still staring at me and laughing at the dumb loser who couldn't even please his wife? Did she know that the kids weren't even mine? Did she take the kids to say goodnight to Papa Bill like she always did to me? My mind was all over the place, picturing her and Carolina getting dirty with Bill Wayne while the kids cried in the next room. I shook my head. She was so pissed off, she knew I was wrong. And on Monday, I'm gonna have a blast scaring her. I'll make sure that this dumbass never works as a nanny again. I was about to call the agency, but wait, what am I doing? I shouldn't take my anger out on someone who probably has no chance of this ending well. It's a lose-lose situation. If she had told me she would lose her job, she could have just left. But it seems like she actually cares about our kids, who she's been looking after even before. Alright, so Sonia came into the world and I was pissed off, but maybe not really at her. Anyway, I headed to work and when I got there, Michelle was already in the office. It was like the drama from the past few days had disappeared. She was all about business. I saw in my schedule that she had cleared my day for some marketing stuff. I got settled at my desk and she brought me my morning coffee, like she has been doing for the past 9 years working for me. Then she sat down on the other side of the table and I realized she had brought coffee for herself too. That was definitely a first. I had never really dabbled in marketing before, so I asked her when I had gotten involved in it. She grinned at me, but it was kind of an evil grin that somehow made me feel good inside. We need to come up with a plan, she said, referring to the last part of Lena's strategy. I looked at her, not really getting what she meant. Tell everyone, Michelle said. Her friends, family, church groups, volunteer groups, basically anyone and everyone she interacts with needs to know who she is and what she's accomplished. But that will make me look bad, I protested. I'll just end up being a joke, a laughing stock. If you can't even please your wife and you're raising someone else's kids, you better speak up and tell your side of the story. She warned me that if you don't, Caroline will, and trust me, it will make you look way worse than just being a clueless cuck. What about being an abusive partner or mistreating your own kids? People will buy into that shit and when she retaliates, she's gonna come at you with everything she's got. So, you better speak up first and people might not be as quick to believe any accusations against you. Some will still buy it, but you gotta do something. Michelle finished putting together a media package with all the proof of Caroline cheating. It had a report from a private investigator, a DNA report proving I'm not the dad of my kids, videos from my house like one of James and Bill, and some bedroom videos I didn't want to see. Then I got an email from Lorraine saying Stephanie gave her a DNA sample from Bill and she checked it. Got the DNA test results back and turns out he's definitely the dad of both kids. I kind of had a moment where I stopped seeing them as my own. We packaged up the new info and are getting ready to send it out to Caroline's parents, my parents, and her siblings who I'm tight with. Also sending electronic copies to all her Facebook and LinkedIn peeps and anyone else I can think of. Gonna mail them out to our close fam with a courier I paid for. Yo, I had this delivery company scheduled for Monday morning at 10 o'clock, right when the balloon moon was supposed to rise. I just needed to make it through the weekend. Being an engineer, I had a plan in mind and whipped up a little device in less than an hour. It had a motor, a timer, and a battery. I set it up so the motor would spin and cause a vibration after a certain amount of time. When I got home on Friday night, I snuck the device under Sophie's pillow after the babysitter left. It was supposed to go off at 6 in the morning the next day, which is usually when we wake up. Sophie woke up too, so no weekend morning sex for us. Everything went according to plan. I woke up when Sophie came into our room and got into bed with us, so no sexy time. I just smiled to myself. I kept myself busy all day Saturday, finally doing all the stuff Caroline had been bugging me about for months. When she mentioned it, I just told her it was about time I got them done since she wouldn't stop nagging me about it. So, on Saturday night, Caroline tried to get me in the mood, but I just acted like I was passed out when she came out of the bathroom. Then on Sunday, her kid woke up from my noisy gadget. We ended up taking the kids to the zoo for the whole day. There were moments when I looked at Caroline, the woman I thought loved me, along with the kids I thought were mine, and I almost lost it. I had to bite my lip to keep it together. I cried my eyes out trying to keep my emotions in check, but I survived the weekend. On Monday, I was pumped. I told Caroline I'd be working from home. I needed to have a chat with the au pair. Caroline left for work like she always does, popping her head into my office to say goodbye. I acted like I was super busy with emails and just grunted in response. I heard her car drive off and the door shut. I checked the time, 8:15. The au pair knocked on my office door. She wanted to take the kids to the play center, but I told her, no way. Nah, they should just chill at home. This caught her off guard. I had never said no to her before, but she just nodded and went back to the kids. I could hear how bummed James was that he couldn't come, but he really wanted to. A little after 9, she showed up at the house. I was surprised, but I let her in. For the first time since I've known her, I made coffee for her. At 9:30, we had a conference call with Lorraine Gary. Lorraine said, "This is your last shot to back out. I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying that if you change your mind." Hey, it's the weekend now, so I gotta be honest, I said it without a doubt. Catch you on the flip side. Lorraine said everything was good to go. I kept checking my email, waiting for those confirmation messages to come through at exactly 10 a.m. The first one came, then another 3 minutes later, and the third 5 minutes after that. Just as I was waiting for Caroline to call, my phone rang. It wasn't her, it was my mom. "Hey Mom, what's up?" I asked. "Did you check out the package I sent?" she asked. "Yeah, I did, but then you." "I know just as much as you do. I told Caroline has been cheating on me, probably the whole time we've been married, with her boss. The kids aren't even mine. I'm divorcing that jerk Gary." "No, Mom, you can't stop me. I have to work, I have other calls." I hung up, but it immediately rang again. This time, it was Caroline. I didn't answer, waiting for her to continue. "We need to talk," she said. Still no response from me. "I'm coming back home," she ended the call. "Caroline is on her way," I told Michelle. "I'll step aside," she said. I wanted to ask her to stay, but I didn't know how to do it. I just looked up at her. "Call me," she said, "when you find out what's going on." She left. Caroline arrived home about 20 minutes later. I heard her car drive up to the house. She didn't even bother going into the garage. I didn't know what to expect when she walked into the house. I didn't know whether she would come in armed or slip away with her tail between her legs. Anyway, she came into my office and sat down opposite me at the table. "Gary," she began. "Not interested." I cut her off and told her straight up, "I ain't interested." I said, "I don't even want to hear a word from you. You lied to me for 9 damn years, saying neither of them kids were mine. And you convinced me to get a vasectomy while you were still on the pill so you could keep fooling around with Daddy Bill." Her eyes got wide at that. "So no, Caroline," I said. "I don't give a damn what you gotta say. My lawyer's info is in the papers you got when you got served. If you got something to say, spit it out." "Go talk to her about the kids," she asked. "What kids?" I replied. "I don't have any kids, and if it were up to you, I never would. I could ask why you did this to me, but I don't want to hear another lie. I'm not interested in your excuses, justifications, or reasons. I want this to be over so I can pick up the pieces of my life and move on." I called the au pair into the room. She could hear me because my office door was open and she was just in the next room. "You're fired," I said. "Leave immediately." She was like, "Why?" "Because you covered for her," I said, pointing at Caroline. "You knew she was getting busy with her boss, and I don't know if you knew the kids are his, not mine, but you definitely knew what was going on. I have a video of you talking to Bill about children. Get out, Gary, Caroline said. You can't fire her, I pay her salary, she added. The au pair looked at Caroline with a thankful look in her eyes. Okay, I said. I've already contacted the agency and told them that you were involved in an affair and agreed to keep it quiet. Listen, if they kick you off their list, Caroline will have to do more than just pay you. She'll have to sort out all the boring stuff like taxes, vacation time, retirement, sick pay, and don't forget about insurance. The au pair's face went pale when she found out she not only lost her job, but also got taken off the agency's roster. It's gonna be tough for her to find another gig now. The agencies gossip with each other, so they all know what's up. Get out, I said, and she bolted. Did it have to go down like that? Caroline had the nerve to start talking again. I told her straight up, I don't want to hear it. All I want is for her to grab her stuff, grab her kids, and get out of my house. This is my home too. She tried to argue, saying it's in both our names, but I shut that down quick. It's registered only in my name, so until the courts say otherwise, she needs to get the hell out. She jumped a little when I raised my voice. Then James walked in and called for his mommy. Sonia fell, and Caroline, with a shocked look and tears streaming down her face, got up and walked towards her. Hey, I told my daughter to pack up her stuff and leave. A few minutes later, she came back with Sonia in her arms. She asked if I wanted to say goodbye to Sonia, but I told her no. Sonia isn't my daughter, and he's not my son. Take them to Papa Bill and let him deal with his own kids. They have nothing to do with me. Then Gary left. I heard the front door close and a few minutes later her car started up. She's gone. I finally let out the breath I'd been holding and fell apart. I didn't hear anything after that. The door swung open and I freaked out when someone grabbed me from behind and I ended up on the floor with my head in my hands. I glanced up and it was Michelle holding me, pulling me close and hugging me while I cried. It took me a while to compose myself again. I just threw away 9 years of marriage, my kids, my whole life is gone. I didn't even want to face the world anymore. Michelle took charge and said, let's go. Lorraine mentioned it would take Caroline around 4 hours to get an emergency warrant to enter the house. Yo, so she's got kids and this is her crib, so she'll probs be back. Do you really want to make her happy by kicking you out of your own place? I grabbed some clothes and important docs, then had to find a place to crash. Packed up my stuff in Michelle's car and bounced. First stop was the office where I got help. Later, Lorraine hit me up to wait for some presentation. Turns out, not only was there an eviction notice, but also a restraining order, meaning I couldn't come back. So basically, I gotta be within 100 meters of the house if I want to grab anything, and I gotta set up an appointment and have Caroline's lawyer come along, all on my dime. I was so confused at first, but turns out I've been crashing in Michelle's extra room. All my clothes are in the closet and my papers are organized in the office cabinets. It's been a week since Caroline filed, so I've just been working and then crashing at Michelle's place. She's been taking care of me, making me coffee, cooking breakfast in the morning, and all that. So we headed to the office together, and it was like nothing had changed between us. She was still all business, and other than a hug when I broke down at home on the first day, I never smiled at her. But to be honest, I had nothing to smile about anyway. On Monday morning, we had a meeting with the lawyers for the company that Caroline and Bill worked for. I didn't know all the details, but apparently we filed a claim for an amount that the company couldn't afford. They had insurance, but the maximum amount was $1 million and we were screwed. They were asking for way more than just being professional. My lawyer, Lorraine, was grinning like a Cheshire cat. Their lawyer asked what needed to be done, and Lorraine replied that I had to agree to immediate and permanent dismissal of the senior member, loss of pension, and keeping Caroline on staff for at least 3 years, plus paying $1.5 million. I wasn't really paying attention as they negotiated. In the end, they agreed to everything, but I would only receive $750,000. At least it would pay off. I owed the company pension fund some money, but I'll pay it all back once my divorce is done, Lorraine said. They all nodded in agreement. Lorraine hung around for the next meeting, which was with Bill Wainwright's lawyers. After leaving their office, I was $500,000 richer. With that money, I was able to pay off the pension fund loan in full and still had a little extra cash left over. My final meeting of the day was with Carolina's lawyers. Carolina was in the office with them but totally ignored me when I walked in. Melly and Lorena were also there. This whole accounting thing in the divorce is just ridiculous. Caroline's lawyer started talking about how her client is the main boss and owner of a company worth around $20 million, not to mention all the money in the house, savings, and 401k. Before he could finish, Lorraine cut him off and pulled out some papers from her bag. She pointed out that, according to the prenup that everyone signed, the company is off limits. So, my client recently went through a divorce and ended up putting a ton of money into a company. He basically used up all his savings, his 401k, and even took out a loan against his home. On top of that, he had to borrow from the company's pension fund. One of the partners wanted to get out of the company, and it was crucial that the shares didn't end up in the hands of a competitor who's been trying to take over for years. Because of the pension fund loan, he's now making less money than me and your client. Her lawyer is gonna ask the court to make some sort of maintenance deal so he can help him out until he figures things out. What about the kids? Lorraine's lawyer asked. There's DNA proof that these ain't his kids. Lorraine admitted she lied on the birth certificates to make my client the dad, trying to scam him. Also, we're gonna sue for damages 'cause she tricked him into getting sterilized, making him think it was the right move. So basically, the only option for your client is to sign the divorce papers, pack up her stuff, and bounce from the marital home, leaving it all to the husband. She'll get half of the joint account, which currently has $944.315. The lawyer glanced at the papers, then at Kalini. For the first time, she looked at me and said, "Gary, please." "I know," I replied, 9F******ing years. You lied to me for 9 damn years, every single day. You got nothing to say that I wanna hear." Caroline just looked at us. So, she saw her lawyer and was like, "Yeah, I'll sign those papers." I wasn't around when she bounced from the crib, but then I got a letter from her legal peeps saying the restraining order was lifted and the house was all mine again. I could have gone back, but nah, I decided to sell that joint instead. It didn't quite cover what I owed the bank, but I made up the diff and they were cool with it. 2 months went by and I was still crashing in Michelle's guest room after we split. Caroline went back to live with her folks, even though I tried to show them she was in the wrong. They were totally Team Caroline and wouldn't even give me the time of day. But honestly, I wasn't too torn up about it. Stephanie didn't end up divorcing Bill like she said she would, and I didn't bother asking why. Turns out, Bill lost his fancy job and retirement plan, so they had to sell their house in the fancy neighborhood and downsize to a little apartment. But Bill still had some connections and skills, so he managed to snag a decent job and make ends meet, even if he's not raking in as much cash as before. Go figure. Do you know if she saw Caroline? I haven't seen her since the day at her lawyer's office and I really don't care. I was at work, sitting at my desk when Michelle barged in without even waiting for me to say anything. "Bill is dead," she said without any hesitation. "What happened?" I asked. "Well, apparently Stephanie caught him with Caroline again," she said. "She shot him." I leaned back in my chair, a big smile on my face. I tried to hide it, but I couldn't. "Nothing bad could have happened to a better guy," I finally said. Michelle laughed and said, "I'm pissed off that you asked me, I'm actually thrilled about it." Then she added, "That jerk got what was coming to him, by the way." As she said this, she placed an official envelope on my desk. I looked at it in amazement, and we both knew what was inside. I opened it and simply said, "I'm free at last." Michelle responded, "Finally, you're a free man." And then, out of nowhere, she kissed me. It wasn't just a peck on the cheek or lips, it was a full-on kiss with tongue, lips, and curling fingers. Finally, she let me go. I sat back in my chair, shocked and tense, like the main mast of a T-clipper. She giggled, looking down and seeing how excited I was. "For 9 years," she said, "I took care of you. You're the most perfect man I've ever met. You never disrespected me by checking out my legs or butt, or trying to touch me inappropriately. I loved you for that. I've been waiting for you for 9 years, and now you're free. I know you've always respected me, and that's a kind of love too. We make a great team. I know you inside out. Listen, every wife knows her husband inside and out, and if you stop and really think about it, you know me just as well. Give me a chance to prove to you that not all women are deceitful and unfaithful. Please. I was shocked when I found out. I remembered all the good times we had together before the betrayal. I thought about how I always stood up for her, even getting my business partner kicked out just to defend her. And then it hit me, I still have genuine feelings for Michelle. I realized that it's impossible to move on. I've been working closely with someone for a while now, and I didn't realize I had feelings for them until I was with Caroline. I didn't need to think about those feelings back then, but now I definitely do. Do you have anything to say? She asked, looking concerned. It was the first time I saw her like that. How many? I asked, unsure. She looked confused. How many what? She asked. How many kids should we have? I replied. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so your partner doesn't cheat on you. Yo, you gotta hear this next story, it's gonna blow your mind. But I'm telling you, if you're not 18 yet, don't even bother listening to it.